The dollar, that little green piece of paper everyone seems to adore, as if it were blessed by the gods themselves.
For more than a century, this modest slip has ruled the world's trade, decided the fate of nations, and, rather amusingly, convinced billions that true power can fit neatly inside a wallet. But imagine just for a moment that it vanished. No dollars in your bank, no dollars in global reserves, not even a crumpled one hiding beneath your sofa. What then would happen to the grand machinery of the world economy, the one so delicately built upon this simple rectangle of promise? You see, the dollar isn't just American money, it's the world's anchor. It's the unit by which oil is priced, debts are measured, and governments quietly reassure themselves that everything is still under control. Take it away, and the balance begins to tremble. The United States would, of course, be the first to feel the quake. Its borrowing power, that comfortable habit of printing promises and calling them bonds, would collapse overnight. Without the world's appetite for dollars, the American government would suddenly find itself having to live within its means, a concept, I suspect, it hasn't practiced in quite some time.
Meanwhile, countries holding trillions in US debt, China, Japan, and others, would face a rather awkward morning. Their wealth, tied to an evaporating currency, would shrink like silk in the rain. And as for global trade, chaos.
Ships would stall imports, oil would sit unsold, and every nation would scramble to agree on a new language of value. Some might turn to gold, that old, reliable friend of civilization, while others might propose digital currencies, backed not by trust, but by algorithms. The transition would be slow, messy, and quite theatrical. And for ordinary people, prices would spiral, imports would vanish, savings would evaporate. The world would quickly learn that money, in truth, is only valuable because we believe it is. Without belief, it's just paper and ink, charming to look at, but tragically useless in buying bread. To understand what would happen if it vanished, we must first understand why it reigns in the first place. Because you see, no one ever voted for it to be king. The world simply agreed that it should be. After the Second World War, the global economy lay in ruins. Europe was exhausted, and the United States, rich, stable, and conveniently holding most of the world's gold, stepped forward. In 1944, at a quiet little gathering in Bretton Woods, the dollar was chosen as the reference point for global trade. Other currencies would peg themselves to it, and it, in turn, would be pegged to gold. Elegant, simple, and most advantageous for the Americans. For a time, this golden order worked splendidly. The dollar became the bloodstream of the global economy, and America enjoyed what economists, with exquisite politeness, call an exorbitant privilege. It could spend freely, and the world would simply keep lending. But in 1971, President Nixon rather unceremoniously ended the gold standard. The dollar was no longer backed by gold, merely by confidence. Yet, remarkably, the world continued to believe, and so the system endured. Today, around 60% of all global reserves, the financial rainy day funds of entire nations, are held in dollars. Oil, food, technology, international debt, nearly everything flows through it. It's not just currency, it's infrastructure. Now, imagine that structure collapsing overnight. Banks would freeze, stock markets would halt, and trade would grind to a standstill. Not because the goods disappeared, but because no one could agree on how to value them. Ships full of cargo would sit in ports, unable to unload because payments couldn't clear. Oil companies wouldn't know what to charge. Airlines wouldn't know what to pay for fuel. It would be, in short, the world's largest economic traffic jam. Within America, the shock would be catastrophic. Crises would explode as people lost faith in the replacement currency. Whatever emergency new dollar the government conjured up, hyperinflation would turn ordinary savings into trivia. Bread might cost thousands, then millions. People would barter again, groceries for fuel, jewelry for rent. Civilization, ever so briefly, would look rather pre-modern.
Meanwhile, other nations would scramble to stabilize their economies. China, Japan, Saudi Arabia, all holding vast reserves of what is now worthless paper.
Some might attempt to peg their currencies to gold again. Others might try to create regional currencies or adopt digital ones. But trust takes time to rebuild, and time, in a crisis, is a luxury few can afford.
Eventually, another currency would rise, perhaps the euro, perhaps the yuan, perhaps even a coalition of several, but it wouldn't happen overnight. You see, the dollar's power isn't just economic, it's psychological, it's habit, tradition, faith. Once the world starts using something, it becomes very difficult to stop. The disappearance of the dollar, therefore, wouldn't simply erase value, it would erase certainty. And if history teaches us anything, it's that when money fails, people turn not to reason, but to panic. Still, humanity would adapt, as it always does. Trade would resume, new systems would emerge, and eventually a new global standard would take hold. Perhaps digital, perhaps decentralized, perhaps backed once again by something tangible. But one thing would remain the same: our eternal need to believe in something, anything that can stand in for trust. Because money, dear viewer, isn't truly wealth. It's a story, a shared illusion we all agree to believe.